Halo Infinite's multiplayer is a good game inhibited by its free-to-play nature. While the game is a hell of a lot of fun and satisfying in terms of its gameplay, the business aspect of the game holds it back from being in the upper echelon of Halo multiplayer titles. Like, don't get me wrong, the game is great when it comes to actually playing it. But with that said, its free-to-play nature with its slow progression system, bevy of microtransactions, battle pass, and having less content compared to past Halo games means that the game doesn't reach the soaring heights of previous Halo multiplayer experiences, at least not yet, because that's the thing with live services. They can either get better or worse over time. Such is the nature of free-to-play games. But before we get ahead of ourselves, allow me to restate that Halo Infinite is currently a fun game. In fact, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is pure bliss when it comes to actually playing it. For a longtime fan of the series like myself, Halo Infinite's frenetic FPS mayhem is the sweet, delectable nectar from the tit of nostalgia that I've been craving for years. Whether I'm rattling off headshots with a battle rifle, defending the flag on Capture the Flag, firing my rocket launcher, or chasing an enemy carrier in Oddball, Halo Infinite's multiplayer scratches that Halo itch that I've been missing in my life as of late. That I threw a plasma grenade onto an opponent's ass and watched it explode feeling of joy that I haven't felt in years. And truly, this game is really good when it comes to actually playing it, because while I suck at the game and watch my corpse get teabagged by immature dipshits more often than I'd care to admit, I lived for the moments where my rocket shot netted me a double kill, or if I went on a roll and earned a killing spree, and as a result, these victories kept me hooked in Halo Infinite's multiplayer long term. And I found myself checking into the multiplayer for hours at a time at minimum, because truly, I'm having a hell of a lot of fun with the game, and I consistently feel that itch to play just one more game online. It is quite awesome like that. Halo Infinite's multiplayer works because it retains Halo's core DNA. Unlike many FPS games these days, Halo Infinite has no loadouts, meaning that the player must scavenge for weapons on the map. The maps themselves are meticulously crafted and have memorable choke points where the two opposing teams clash. Players have shields, which means that the person who shoots first doesn't always win due to how players have more health. Combat is less about twitch action and more about strategy. Hell, if anything, it's about getting the drop on your opponent and putting yourself in the best position on the map in order to win, and there's a bevy of different game types beyond that of typical multiplayer games, like Tactical Slayer, where players don't have shields, Oddball, where teams must hold on to a skull that allows them to score points, and Fiesta, where players spawn with random weapons. And with all that, Halo Infinite's multiplayer is unique in today's online space, all while being classic Halo. It is unique by staying true to its roots. If you've played a Halo game before, you know what I'm talking about. The only real difference here is the armor abilities. Dissimilar to Halo Infinite's campaign, which I reviewed in my previous video, go check it out if you haven't, armor abilities are scavenged on the battlefield just like how all the game's weapons are. Whether we are talking about a drop wall, grapple shot, invisibility, or overshield, these abilities can give you a necessary edge in combat, and while they don't ultimately transform the game, the abilities do add their own spin to the combat. It's quite good, just like Halo Infinite's multiplayer as a whole. However, with all that being said, Halo Infinite's free-to-play nature does hold the game back from perfection though. While the gameplay is a shit ton of fun on its own merits, its progression system isn't all that rewarding. See, there's a lot of cosmetic unlockables in the game. In fact, there are different suits of armor with hundreds of their own unlockables like headgear, chest pieces, shoulder and knee accessories, and etc. that are in theory unlocked as you play the game. But a lot of these items are blocked behind a paywall via extensive microtransactions for either cosmetics or XP boosters that help you level up faster. And then there's the battle passes, which you have to pay money for so that you can earn more rewards as you level up by playing and completing various daily and weekly challenges. And while sure, the battle pass does make Halo Infinite's multiplayer progression system more rewarding, you do get a lot more loot than you otherwise did before, it's still not rewarding enough because even though I've played several hours of multiplayer, I haven't unlocked all that much meaningful gear. In fact, my in-game avatar looks very similar to the default one, but with minor alterations. Hell, as of this recording, I don't even have any headgear yet for either of my suits, and honestly, that's not good enough. It's like getting a Happy Meal with one French fry What is this bullshit? Admittedly, I get that Halo Infinite's multiplayer is free to play. After all, people don't have to pay money in order to start playing it, and the developers at 343 Industries utilize microtransactions and battle passes to gain a profit from their free-to-play game. I get that. But the problem here is that past Halo games, like say Halo Reach, did have an intrinsically rewarding progression system included in the game. In fact, almost everything the player does in Reach, whether it be campaign, multiplayer, or the wave-based survival mode called Firefight, netted the player's EXP and awarded the players with meaningful unlockables and cosmetic items, which was a good thing. There weren't any battle passes or microtransactions back then. You just played a fun game with an awesome progression system. That's it. And sure, Halo Reach wasn't free to play, it still had a far more rewarding progression system compared to Halo Infinite's free-to-play multiplayer, because that's honestly the benefit of paying full price for a game rather than paying for a live service. You get a whole complete package there. Additionally, Halo Infinite's multiplayer's free-to-play nature affects its content as well, mostly because Halo Infinite's multiplayer has less content compared to past Halo games, by which I mean it's missing some important game types like Juggernaut and Infection, and while some game types like Attrition were put in the weekly event slot for a limited time, and other multiplayer modes like Free-for-All and Fiesta were added to matchmaking as regular game types sometime after launch, the fact that Halo Infinite is missing content is undeniable. Certain game modes are just absent, just like good game design in Anthem. The lack of a Forge mode is a problem as well. In past Halo games, Forge was a map customization and creation mode that was a big part of Halo's multiplayer staying power due to how custom games and playable maps made by players were shared by the game's developers via matchmaking, and came pre-packaged with numerous other Halo games. But Halo Infinite's Forge mode was missing at launch and won't be added until at least May of 2022, meaning that this game mode that added a lot of variety to the multiplayer mayhem in past Halo games because users created their own maps that often complemented some of the more sillier custom game types is missing in Halo Infinite for the next few months at minimum, which isn't optimal for Halo Infinite's multiplayer considering that its variety of multiplayer modes is already sparse compared to past Halo games. And honestly, Halo Infinite's multiplayer needs Forge mode as soon as possible. Last but not least, a final issue comes in the form of Halo Infinite's split screen. Unlike the previous game, Halo 5 Guardians, a game that is uniformly recognized as the worst Halo game, Halo Infinite's multiplayer has split screen, meaning that on some level it can once again fulfill its nature as being the Xbox's premier Nintendo-style party game, which is cool. But there is a problem though, mostly in how Halo Infinite's multiplayer doesn't allow the player to take guest profiles online. See, in past Halo games, a party leader with an Xbox Live account could take up to 3 other people online with them as guests and play online. But sadly, guests aren't allowed to participate online in Halo Infinite. Only accounts with Xbox Live can play matchmaking via split screen, while the non-Xbox Live accounts are relegated to playing split screen offline. And while offline split screen is fine and you can add bots, the lack of guest functionality like in previous games prevents Halo Infinite's multiplayer from fulfilling its full potential as a Nintendo-style party game, because unless all your friends visiting your house have Xbox Live accounts, you are shit out of luck if you wanted to play online. Sad to say. So by the end, Halo Infinite's multiplayer has a fair few issues, whether we are discussing how its free-to-play progression system isn't as fulfilling as past games, that there's a bevy of microtransactions, that there aren't as many game modes compared to older Halo titles, that Forge mode is missing in action, or how you can't take guests online. Halo Infinite's multiplayer is imperfect. But with that being said, these flaws are more tied to the progression system and absence of content more so than the actual content itself, because when it comes to Halo Infinite's multiplayer gameplay, the game is pretty great. It looks, feels, and plays like classic Halo. The more methodical and unique nature of Halo's combat remains intact. The Halo-specific vehicles, weapons, and game types are wonderful, the maps are creative, and the gameplay itself is just such fun. For sure, even with its imperfections, Halo Infinite's online offerings play like a Halo fan's dream. It is a good game, even though it's unfortunately held back by being packaged in such a frustrating live service. See ya. And with that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like rating, share, subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment telling me what you think of Halo Infinite's multiplayer. Also, please consider checking out my Patreon page. $1 a month gets you onto this credit sequence and onto my Discord. $5 a month or more allows you to request reviews. Get on that. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones, and David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all. Why do people even teabag? What is the purpose here? Why?